Newmarket for the Bet365 European Free Handicap listed event over 7 furlongs. And the non-runner is Perfect Angel, hearing that Seven Heavens has gone down early. And your 5-2 favourite is called by Frankel, John Gosden and Frankie Dettori. White Cliffs of Dover at 100-30. Next in, you got Sir Dancelot at 4s, 11-2 for Majest, Miss Infinity at 9-1, Rodani at 10s, and Private Matter the outsider at 20-1. 7 go.
Richard Haddon joins me ahead of the free handicap to talk Majest. He was a very good winner at Newbury, and that day you seemed to have a bit of excitement about this horse. One run subsequently, and it was up in class.
Yeah, his last run, I was a little bit disappointed with at the time. But looking back on it, it was a very hot race. His work at the start of this year was only okay, but the last couple of weeks he's really picked up. I took him to Kempton, he's done a fair bit. He's a horse we like a lot, but sort of in no man's land as to what he is and where we need to go with him. So this will tell us a lot. I have a sneaky feeling he might run well. He looks great, and Niles has been running quite well, so we're hopeful.
Did he always strike you as a horse that was going to come into his own as a 3-year-old? Yes.
He was always a very big horse, and we left him alone. He didn't come right till probably the middle of the year, last year. But he's come to hand quite quickly this year, and he looks to have grown into himself, and physically he's done very well. So hopefully, yeah. I don't know yet. I will tell you more in 10 minutes. I'm afraid, that's just what they're like. It's that time of year. We don't know. We know what we want them to be, but now we find out, bubble bursting week, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be for some. And size taken into account, what about this ground for him?
I think the ground's fine. He's got no issues there, and he's an acclimation. He'll go on, ground as hard and fast as you like.
He looks very well. Best of luck, Richard.
Thank you.
And there is Majesté, moving nicely to post in the hands of Sean Levy. What do you make of him, Eddie?
Well, when I first saw him in the pre-parade ring, I thought he looked on the tubby side, but he looks fine. He looks as though he's done all right from 2 to 3. He's not a big horse, but he's well proportioned, and the form of his maiden win was okay, and I'm not surprised he didn't quite come up to scratch when tried over 7 furlongs the first time behind Rivet and Thunder Snow, both of whom have gone on to much better things.
I think Richard Haddon would probably consider that 2016 was just a little underwhelming by the stable's extremely high standards, but they've come out in 2017 from the traps with purpose, and with quite a nice looking clutch of 3-year-olds in particular, I think.
Yes, had a good horse win at Chelmsford the other night, one of those 3-year-olds who's got a Guinea's entry.
Many eyes will be on Seven Heavens, because he at once looked exciting and rather impetuous last season. The first 2 wins were impressive in their own way, and then that tendency to run into the bridle and be keen completely undid him when stepped up in class.
Yeah, the preliminaries, everything has been done to try and keep the lid on this horse. He was kept away from the other horses in the pre-parade ring. He was brought in early. He was taken down to post early. Dettori has got off him briefly at the start, and he's still getting a bit sweaty, a little bit edgy, but he's not boiled over.
I said to Frankie Dettori, how much talent does he have? He said he's very good, he's just a bit of a schoolboy still. And I said, is this the time when you turn the schoolboy into a man? He said he'll probably make a man out of me.
Yeah,
test my mettle a bit.
But even on the bare form of him finishing last in the Dewhurst, when things went wrong early on, he pulled too hard, and Frankie gave up in the last furlong when it was evident he couldn't get anywhere near them. Even on that bare form, he's got a good chance, and obviously he's shown very smart maiden form when winning at Ascot first time.
Just needs to harness that natural enthusiasm and exuberance, and if he can do that and race kindly, he's probably the one they've all got to beat. Seven Heavens, the Frankel out of heaven set, and that very good race mare that's been a good producer for Cheveley Park Stud as well. Number 3 is White Cliffs of Dover, who I thought looked very well in the paddock.
Yeah, I thought he looked well. His old adversary, Sir Dancelot, who they were second and third in the Group 3 here at the back end behind one of Hannon's Larchmont Lad. They both look well. I thought White Cliffs, if anything, was slightly more behind than Sir Dancelot, but he's just a little bit more on it. Well, they're both on their toes, and he was just a little bit, I thought, a bit rounded in the belly than Sir Dancelot.
And like Aiden's 2 fillies in the Nell Gwyn a little bit later on, Roly Poly and Brave Anna, this horse, White Cliffs of Dover, is by Warfront, and it is a Warfront day ground-wise for sure.
Yes, absolutely, whereas Sir Dancelot didn't seem to handle the dip too well that day here last autumn, and that might count against him.
You said to me as you watched them around the paddock, you thought Redani had done well from 2 to 3, and I think we can readily excuse a poor run last back end in the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, and the run here over a mile the time before when he was in the rear echelon and stumbled, and again Sylvester, much as Frankie had done in the Dewhurst, eased off and he finished well beaten. Jim Crowley takes over today. He's got a chance to set the record straight, because he'd looked really classy, if a little bit idiosyncratic in his earlier wins, and I think you could take a chance with him bouncing back. But it's two poor runs to put behind him. But he looks as though he's done well physically.
It is the Bet365 European Free Handicap, but only £5 separate the entire field here. Seven Heavens, Sir Dancelot, White Cliffs of Dover, all rated the same. They will have to concede £5 to Miss Infinity, and Majesté and Private Matter and Redani carry 9 stone 5. They're nearly all in then for the Free Handicap of 2017, and Seven Heavens, they've been performing wonders down there, just keeping the lid on that simmering temperament. And if they can continue to do so, he could yet be a pretty exciting prospect. Simon Holt is going to call him home for the Free Handicap.
Yes, it's going to be fascinating to see Seven Heavens' demeanour in the early stages. It was all too hot, too unprofessional in the Dewhurst when we last saw him. He's going into stall 2. They're just about ready. And they're off, racing away from the 7 furlong start. Private Matter beginning well. White Cliffs of Dover towards the outside is prominent. Seven Heavens towards the far side. Frankie Dettori in the pink cap, then followed by Sir Dancelot over there. In the centre, Majesté, Redani on the near side, red and white jacket, and Miss Infinity is restrained at the back of the field. White Cliffs of Dover now sent into the lead by Ryan Moore as they cover the first quarter mile from Private Matter and Redani. Seven Heavens far side in the hood for the first time, tracked all the time by Sir Dancelot. Majesté in the centre, and on the right, out the back just, is Miss Infinity. On their way now, passing the 4 furlong marker and on towards the 3, and it's White Cliffs of Dover just beginning to stretch a little, goes a length and a half clear of Private Matter, a neck away then to Redani. On the far side, Seven Heavens, followed by Sir Dancelot just being asked to close a little. Majesté is being pushed along as well, and then Miss Infinity. White Cliffs of Dover still holding sway, but 1 or 2 challengers getting closer. Seven Heavens on the far side, Redani out wide, and Private Matter as they run down into the dip. But White Cliffs of Dover is finding plenty here for Ryan Moore. Leads by 3. Redani and Seven Heavens giving chase, but maybe they're chasing in vain up the hill. It's White Cliffs of Dover seeing it out very strongly, and the Free Handicap goes to Ballydoyle. White Cliffs of Dover wins from Redani second, Seven Heavens, and then Private Matter and Sir Dancelot.
There have been any number of horses more talked about, more heralded through the winter months from Ballydoyle than this, but make no mistake, this was an impressive performance from White Cliffs of Dover. 100 to 30 he went off, soon took charge of the European Free Handicap, and won with a degree of emphasis under Ryan Moore, the son of Warfront in the silks of Michael Tabor, Derek Smith and Sue Magner. Strike for Ballydoyle, strike for Aidan O'Brien. And he points his toe in the manner of a horse who really appreciates the surface. Just changed his legs coming out of the dip, but then ran straight to the line, flash of the tail when given a slap by Ryan Moore, but he galloped on with quite significant purpose. And if this is some sort of citer as regards the whole group of 3-year-old colts from Ballydoyle, they will be well pleased.
Indeed, they will, because it's a comprehensive victory, a confident ride from Ryan Moore. And the horse has clearly trained on really well. Really enjoyed the ground, as you say. His old adversary, who's on the far side at the back there, Sir Dancelot. He couldn't get near him today. Although the winning distance was only 3/4 of a length, I think he won with a lot of authority. The second horse, Redani, kept on in doughty fashion. I mean, he's chased the winner. He's always unlikely to catch him, whereas the favourite, Seven Heavens in the Abdullah silks, just pulled a bit too hard early again. Frankie took a furlong and a half or so to settle him. and he ran well, but he was giving way to only he wasn't giving way to the winner, but he was giving a little bit of way to the runner-up, and the combination meant that he couldn't finish second.
He's run okay in the circumstances, Seven Heavens, but he's going to be a work in progress. He's going to be a horse that'll have John Gosden ruminating and scratching his head and wondering just how to pick his way through the first part of the season before perhaps he can then set him some tasks that he can really set down and get stuck into.
Yes, indeed. And further back, Private Matter, who didn't look to have the stature of some of these physically, has run perfectly respectably with Tony Hamilton in the Jubilee Park Silks, just weakening out into 4th place. Sir Dancelot was climbing a little bit, I thought. You'll probably see this better on the head-on. He's second from the left, climbing a little bit in going down the hill and coming back up again, and possibly the ground was too lively for him. Majesté ran like a horse who probably needed the run, and Miss Infinity in the white and black colours was much too keen early, and she hasn't got home as a result, even though she stays further than this.
The winner's a handsome, easy-moving horse.
He floated over the ground. There was just that hint of that just drifting slightly towards the far rail, and Ryan's pulled his whip through and tried to make him go the other way late on, but he was always in command, and it's hard to know how strong the race is as a renewal of it, but he's extended his distance between him and Sir Dancelot. He had decent group form last year and a very solid start for his 3-year-old career. Little hit swish of the tail, as you say, when he came under pressure.
And if this indeed was some sort of a barometer as to the strength of the 3-year-old colts at Ballydoyle, there'll be much more satisfaction for all sorts of other reasons than simply this victory. Having said that, we've got to take this form and wonder how it might go forward, wonder what this horse's target might be. This was 7 today. The mile still now, because Longchamp is closed, the mile for the French Guineas is at Deauville, is a little stiffer than the one round the bend at Longchamp. I just wonder whether that might stretch him a little bit.
A little bit. He wasn't showing signs of stopping, was he? But he's got the pace for 7, and I suppose having already combated a Group 3, the Jersey might be a likely target for him.
Yes, it seems.
It all depends on the pecking order, doesn't it? If they've got to slot them all in their holes, these good colts at Ballydoyle.
Whatever, he is good, and that runner's confirmed it. He's improved from last year. He's good-looking, handsome colt. He's won the free handicap as he's liked. White Cliffs of Dover wins for Ballydoyle, for Aidan O'Brien, for Ryan Moore, and promise of more riches to come for them because they've got Roly Poly and Brave Anna in the Nell Gwyn a little bit later on.
In which Ryan Moore will be riding Roly Poly, but victory for Aidan O'Brien and indeed Ryan Moore in the Bet365 European Free Handicap over 7 furlongs, and certainly stayed on powerfully and just run the track really well today, up there with the pace, and I'm sure they'll be absolutely chuffed with that, with the tongue tie on for the first time today. 130 White Cliffs of Dover beating Radani, who's won the battle for second at 8-1. Seven Heavens failed to settle early, was the beaten favourite in the end, 5-2, finished third. And our second race of the day, the winning time, 2 seconds over the standard. So that was the story at Beverley. We're going to head off to Newmarket now for the 3 o'clock. And this is the Bet365 Earl Of Sefton Stakes, a Group 3 over 9 furlongs without number 3 Berkshire, and 7 go. And betting is as follows: Folkswood at 5-2 for Charlie Appleby, Viren's Army 9-2, Autocratic at 5s, and then we've got 11-2 Spark Plug, Abden at 7s, Bravery at 9-1, and Steel of Madrid at 10-1. 7 go for the Earl of Sefton.
Brian Meehan saddles Spark Plug ahead of our third race here at Newmarket. How is he on his reappearance, Brian?
Really well. He's been working great. He looks tremendous, really. He just seems in very good form.
What was the key to that Cambridgeshire win last year?
Well, I think he took a bad fall in the Hunt Cup 2 years previous, and I think it just took a long time for his confidence to come back, really. And I think that was all it was, as simple as that.
He's always a horse that you know has had a fair bit of ability, but that Hunt Cup spill just really knocked him for a little bit.
Well, it would do. I mean, they were going pretty quick. I mean, Jimmy did his back in, took him out for the season. It was a massive tumble. And the old horse just took some time to come back out of it, included a winter off. But, you know, he's always had lots of ability.
And the way he's progressed subsequently, particularly at Cambridgeshire, when he's worthy of a try this season in group company.
Yeah, well, his rating is as such now that he has to go up a grade. But, you know, his progress since he got his confidence back has been consistent, so it's been easy to upgrade him.
9 is best trip, or anywhere 8 to 10 fine for him?
Well, he clearly loves 9 here, so we'll keep it simple to start with.
And is he likely to come on for this, do you think?
Oh, for sure. He's had the winter off. We had thought about going to Dubai with him, so we started with him early, preparing him early. So, you know, I think he should be quite fit. But for sure he'll come on for it, you know.
Brian, wish you all the best. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
On they go down to Post Park Plug. He must be very dear to Brian Meehan's heart. He certainly had an eventful career. He did Jimmy Fortune one horrible turn one day and then did him a very good turn when winning the Cambridgeshire.
He did. He got the run up the rail and got past Carry On Derrick, the Godolphin horse, who drifted off the rail and whizzed up it. And the culmination of a long season bore fruit. Here he is, up the rail. You'll see Carry On Derrick with the big noseband just edges off the fence, and Fortune takes his chance.
This self-evidently 9 furlongs, big field, strong pace, etc., and he burrowed his way up the rail. He's not going to get that scenario today. No. To what extent is that going to matter, do you think?
It can do. It's a starting point for the season. He'll be a difficult horse to place now because he's probably out of handicaps now. He's up £8 for this 112. He's got to run in these sort of races instead. He's got the tactical speed as well as this stamina. An extra furlong today. Sorry, exactly the same trip today. Folkeswood and Viren's Army. Who's going to make the running out of those two? Because one or other or both of them are going to set the pace. They're drawn. The 2 stalls next to the rail as well, so they can dominate in a way that Carry On Derrick can dominate. But they might be able to hold Sparkplug back today.
OK, well, of the 2 Godolphins, Folkeswood and Viren's Army, which one do you think is best suited to making the running over 9 furlongs?
Both of them. I think probably Folkeswood. I think Folkeswood has just a little bit more class than Viren's Army. Not that Viren's Army hasn't been doing it in Dubai and in a listed event at the back end. You just feel that Folkeswood would probably be slightly better suited by the track. I mean, he has won here before.
The 2 Sir Michael Stout runners are both relatively unexposed, Autocratic and Abdon. They've got ratings of 102 and 109 respectively. You'd be disappointed if they couldn't build on what were fairly productive 3-year-old campaigns.
Yeah, and the very fact that Autocratic turns up in this race where he's not favoured at the weights suggests that Sir Michael thinks he's a bit better than he's been able to show so far. I think that's fair because he had like just the one run at 2, and he made strides in his 3-year-old career, and he won with authority on his final outing at York in a handicap. But that was off a mark of 96, and he's now taking on horses rated 110 plus, some of them. And he's 11-2, as though he's already achieved that sort of mark, which he hasn't. So I'd pass him over from betting point of view. But it's interesting that the stable thinks him good enough to run. And he looks as though he ought to come to hand early on.
And the outsider is Bravery, who was the Lincoln winner, first start for this yard. He appears to be entirely unfancied today.
And although his 2 wins have both come over a mile, the other one was for Aidan O'Brien in Ireland at Dundalk, his profile is not that of a miler, and I think the extra furlong won't be a problem to him. He's very fit, and he lost ground having to be switched to the far side at Doncaster in the early stages, so it was all the better an effort for that, I think. And the runner-up, the horse of Hannon's, Oh This Is Us, has gone on to win a decent handicap at Bath. So form stacks up. It's quite surprising to find the horses fit and in good form. Such a big price.
You can expect this race to be unfolding, at least in the early part of it, over on that far side rail with Viren's Army and Folkeswood 7-2 and 5-2 respectively in the Godolphin Blue, both horses who like to push the pace, as Eddie was telling you. Autocratic 11-2 with Sparkplug, Abdon 7, 10-1 still in Madrid, and Bravery is the outside at 12-1 for the Group 3 Bet365 Earl of Sefton Stakes. We will head up to the commentary box and join Simon.
Waiting for Sparkplug into stall 10. For stall 6 it will be Bravery and Steel of Madrid into stall 4. Bravery will be the last in for this bet365 Earl of Sefton Stakes Group 3. And they're away. The blindfold whipped away from Autocratic, leaving the stalls, who's dropped in early. Abden also restrained. The pace coming from the 2 Godolphin Chargers, and heading down the centre of the course, Folkswood in the all-blue jacket, the white cap worn by James Doyle aboard Viren's Army. They're tracked by Steel of Madrid, Autocratic in the red, white sash, blue cap. Bravery tucked in. On the outside is Sparkplug, a little bit keen perhaps, in the green jacket, and Abden is settled at the back in the claret cap worn by Frankie Dettori. Through the first quarter mile then, and it is Folkswood back from Dubai, a very successful round of form there in Maidan, leading the way to Viren's Army, Steel of Madrid, those two disputing second. They're tracked by Sparkplug, Bravery in between runners, Autocratic on the far side, and Abden on their way now towards the final 4.5 furlongs, and still Folkswood is out in front under William Buick from James Doyle on Viren's Army. Steel of Madrid right there, Pat Dobbs aboard. They're tracked by Autocratic, in behind them Sparkplug, then Bravery, and on the far side is Abden. Now they're on their way towards the final 3 furlongs in the Earl of Sefton, and Folkswood is just upping the ante a little here, stretches on by a couple of lengths. Viren's Army is pushed along, so too on the outside Sparkplug. On the far side Abden tries to come with a run from Autocratic, but it's still Folkswood turning on the tap. Steel of Madrid is the one that's coming after him now though, then Abden on the far side, and Sparkplug as they race inside the final furlong and a half. Out of the dip, Folkswood narrowly to Steel of Madrid, who's sticking to the task. Folkswood hangs away to the right. Steel of Madrid is joining in on the near side as they meet the rising ground. Folkswood holding on grimly. Steel of Madrid with a thrust down the near side, and Steel of Madrid is getting up under Pat Dobbs. Steel of Madrid wins the Earl of Sefton from Folkswood, worn down in the run to the line. Sparkplug was back in third, and Abden fourth.
A good-looking horse, but handsome is as handsome does, and he has done. Steel of Madrid at 10-1. Won the Group 3 Earl of Sefton Stakes for owner Michael Pesca, trainer Richard Hannon, and jockey Pat Dobbs. Horse who won here at listed level over 1.25 miles last May, and he needed every inch of the 9 furlongs to win this, and he was helped by the somewhat errant Folkswood in the closing stages, who came off a true line, but Steel of Madrid was coming with a good challenge at the time. Abden has run a nice race first up this season for a horse who might not have been absolutely wound up, and he's got a bit of knee action as well. But the winner, Steel of Madrid, is a good moving son of Lopta Vega, and I think the Hannons can look forward to a nice season with him if he can just hold it together a bit better than he did last year.
Yeah, he's come here looking really fit, and he obviously was. The winner's been racing in Dubai, and he's run straighter to the line than Folkswood. The runner-up, my brother, has been racing in Dubai. And Buick had to go quite hard after the initial stages to establish himself up front on Folkswood. Tracked by Viren's Army as we expected, and Viren's Army couldn't stay there for the closing stages. And the winner had a good sit in third place.
He had a lovely draft through from the eventual runner-up, the black sleeves and cap, Pat Dobbs, and the winner relaxed into the race as well. By contrast, out the back, Frankie Dettori just took a little while to get Abden switched off and settled. He's run quite a nice race. I'd say a little more juice in the ground might suit him.
Possibly, and the run, I'm sure, was needed. He looked a trifle burly in the paddock, and in comparison to some horses who looked really hard or fully tuned, he's emerged with some credit, and he's raced away from the main action in the closing stages as well on the far side. Sparkplug's run perfectly well for a comeback run. Horse in the green colours, nearest picture. He's kept on really well for third. But as you suggested before the race, the setup of the 9 furlong big field handicaps probably suits him better than a small field conditions race like this one.
I'd be thrilled with Sparkplug if he were mine, because he's looked pretty straightforward today.
You're never likely to have a horse of that class, are you, Nicholas?
No, absolutely not.
One or two of them have knocked on the door over the years, but no, he's run really.
I don't think anything's got close to 112, Ed.
He has run really well, but the 112 is probably not going to be tested, because I doubt he'd be running it in handicaps again. But Folkswood looked like he got the race here not in safekeeping, but he looked as though he was holding Steel of Madrid, and Steel of Madrid just kept on to challenge him again, and Folkswood began to wander, and that was enough to get Steel of Madrid in front, and he's done well. without really having a particularly hard race under Pat Dobbs.
Like him, he's a tall, imposing horse. You can see why he's a little better now than perhaps he was for a fair portion of last season. Steel of Madrid, who was by no means the best in the weights here, rated just 106 coming into today's race. He's been beaten a horse rated £6 his superior, and a nice clean break to the third and fourth. Sparkplug on the right, they're not getting the cover that he'd ideally like, and on the left is Abdon, incidentally, who is a half-brother to the non-runner in this race, Berkshire. Both horses out of the Prix de l'Opera winner of Pat Haslam's for Newsells Park Kinnaird, and the family is a family that tend to have a preference for some give underfoot, so I think on good to soft it'd be interesting.
And he stays a bit further than this as well, so a little bit further. Stablemate further back in the Cheveley Park Red, autocratic, either needed it quite badly or isn't quite up to this class. And
he travelled quite well for a long way.
Yeah, maybe just a mixture of the two. I mean, he shouldn't have any problem with the distance. He stays 10 furlongs, but he's dropped away and finished out the back in last place.
Winner, as we take the closing stages one final time in the silks of Michael Pescud, is Steel of Madrid, and more success for Team Hannon. Another grand day out in the sunshine, and Pat Dobbs, it is who steered this horse home, getting the better of Folkeswood, who wandered off a true line close home. And Rachel will tidy up the SPs, and then we'll catch up with some of the connections.
Thank you, Nick. And the results for the Bet365 Earl of Sefton Stakes. A victory, Richard Hannon and Pat Dobbs. Steel of Madrid at 10-1, quite a big price. Folkeswood, after pretty much leading all the way. Second, the 5-2 favourite, number 5. And just a half a length between them in the end. And our third race, quite slower, just 3:47 over the standard for the 9 furlongs Earl of Sefton. And on now to Newmarket. And it's making the way down to the start for this Lanwades stud Nell Gwyn Stakes, the feature race on day 2 of the Craven meeting. All 11 go. It is Group 3 for the fillies. And a Pamplemousse 7-2, along with Roly Poly 9-2, Sea of Grace, Post Vanity 13-2, 7-1 Brave Anna, Deban at 12s, along with Unforgettable Fillies, attracting a wee bit of support. 16s for Casimira, Kilma 25s, and Chimicha and Taylor Rose, the big outsiders. So the big race on the way.
John Gosden has saddled Deban ahead of the Nell Gwyn. She's 1 from 1. I suppose she has to step up. What chance of her doing so, John?
Well, I think, look, you don't normally go and run fillies rated 80, low 80s in Group 3s, but there are no other races of fillies. I think it's a big gap in our programme for them to run even in a handicap with each other, let alone a conditions race. There are none in April, so we're all forced to run here. I'm very happy with her. She's trained well, but she's still on a learning curve. One race in her life is not going to be enough to teach her everything about the game. So she's drawn on the outside. I told Frankie just sort of sit on the wing of the field and, do your very best. But remember, they're highly experienced, and I'm sure they fancy Roly Poly strongly. She's got all the credentials, and it's a tough race for her. But what do? Not run her?
Would you have run in a handicap had there been that sort of race for her?
There needs to be, or conditions races for fillies in April. I'm not keen particularly on running fillies against colts. I've done it in April, but I'm not keen about it. So I think it's something that needs to be sorted in the programme.
And any looking for comparisons between last year's winner and the same colours? Would they be wrong to do so? They're very different types of filly?
Different types of filly, and this filly hopefully had the ground, whereas the other filly, loved the juice in the ground, and she was highly experienced when she came here. She was a professional. This filly is at this stage in life is got her L plates up.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
L plates on now. Might in a few minutes she make up into a contender for bigger group races through the season. Next few minutes will be most instructive, with French, Irish and British representatives potentially for the 1,000 guineas. Pamplemousse's joint favourite with Roly Poly. Roly Poly and Brave Anna, Aidan O'Brien's 2 fillies, bring forward more than useful juvenile form. Sea of Grace is exciting first start for William Haggis, and Pamplemousse 1 start, and that was just 15 days ago, but coming from a yard, that of Andre Fabre, who A, must always merit the utmost respect when coming to the Roly Mile, and B, who even by their own ridiculously high standards have made a sparkling start to 2017.
She's a big filly, isn't she? And she quickened away very nicely from a field that contained another horse from the same yard. She's won very easily, and Andre Fabre has 6 from 15 in recent years when bringing them over to this country. It's a pretty as high a strike rate as you'd expect from a master trainer, but she didn't beat anything of great note in this race, but she romped home, and she could be a lot better than that. She'll need to be, I think, because there's some good strands of form brought together for this race.
She's by Sayuni, who made a big impact as a stallion last season. She's quite a long filly, but she looks to have a fair degree of class judged on that Chantilly debut. Pierre-Charles Boudot told us earlier on, really, that they weren't quite sure what to expect, and a bit like earlier with Aidan O'Brien in the Colts race, in the free handicap, you fancy this will give Fabre a pretty good idea as to exactly how strong this apparently very good group of 3-year-olds are. Let's talk about the O'Brien fillies, Brave Anna and Roly Poly. They're both by Warfront. Their form matches closely with one another. Strictly on pounds and ounces, Roly Poly ought to reverse the form from the Cheveley Park with Brave Anna, but I like Brave Anna as a horse. I think she lives up to her name. Her disappointments can be put down to unsuitably soft ground.
Yeah, and she came from further back that day, and it's probably quite hard to do that in this race. You'd expect there to be pace from Kilmar and possibly Pamplemousse, but it might be harder to come from behind. They both look very, very keyed up in the preliminaries, Brave Anna and Roly Poly. They went out the last two to go out. They were both very buzzy when the jockeys got on board, but there's Roly Poly in the Tabor Silks looking pretty relaxed down at the start. She's £3 better for that short head in the Cheveley Park, and got the extra furlong as well.
And for all they've got Group 1 form, and Brave Anna has Group 1 winning form, and as such has the £3 penalty here, they apparently are still a little further down the pecking order than Hydrangea and Rhododendron, particularly the last named. Sea of Grace is 9-2. First run for William Haggis was with John Ox. Runs for Sunderland Holdings, which is the Choys, who own See the Stars, and Born to See the Stars' half-brother, who's the sire of Sea of Grace. Substantial filly. I think the feeling is she might need a little further and slightly more cut, but I think they're excited about her.
The way she ran last year, she got the mile really well at the Curragh on her final start. She beat a subsequent Group 3 winner. The form stacks up, and she quickened from the rear to challenge, and then had to go again in the closing stages. And she's got plenty of stamina, but she also has that touch of speed as well. You wouldn't count her out over 7. And that's Sylvester de Souza has just jumped off Kilmar as she goes behind the stalls.
The fourth highest rated of these is Poet's Vanity, and that's off the back of a really taking display when we were in Group 3 here at the back end of last year. How strong do you think that form is?
Okay, probably you can't rate it as highly as the Brave Anna form, or indeed the Sea of Grace form, but nothing wrong with the run, just her third run, and she should improve from that. An Unforgettable filly who wasn't that far behind her was a less experienced filly, or she'd been in less. She wasn't the less experienced filly, that's rubbish, but she looked as though she needed the experience more than Poet's Vanity that day, and she might get closer, she might give her a race. Interesting that the Fabre horse was 5th in that race, Double Lady, who's disappointed on her comeback run this season, but that was behind yet another Fabre winning filly back in France at Maison Lafitte, so Fabre's got a few stacked up.
England, Ireland, France, represented in the Nell Gwyn. Will a classic contender step forward? We'll find out with Simon.
They're away, racing for this Lanwades stud Nell Gwyn Stakes. Roly Poly jumps out alertly on the far side from Poet's Vanity, and also over there is Tallulah Rose and Shumicha. More towards the centre, Kilmar, alongside Unforgettable filly on the outside flank in the red and white jacket is Daban under a little bit of restraint. Further back, Sea of Grace, who's quite free early on. Pamplemousse is held up but settling nicely towards the back alongside Brave Anna, and Casimiera is towards the back on this near side. Roly Poly, Poet's Vanity with Unforgettable filly and Kilmar, these are the ones in the firing line, followed by Chumicha. In behind them, Sea of Grace, Pamplemousse. Then on the near side is Daban, on the far side Brave Anna. Roly Poly is going backwards very quickly indeed as Poet's Vanity goes on from Unforgettable filly. Roly Poly under a lot of pressure now. Sea of Grace is coming through. Brave Anna trying to rally on the far side. Out wide on this right side is Kilmar, followed by Daban as they head on on now towards the final quarter mile. Poet's Vanity, Sea of Grace, Unforgettable Filly, Kilmar, Pomplamoose is staying on from the back, so too Daban on the stand side, and 4 or 5 possibilities here. Poet's Vanity and Sea of Grace, Unforgettable Filly trying hard, Daban with the strong run down the near side, getting there with every stride. Daban near side of Unforgettable Filly, and Daban will go on and win the Nell Gwyn. From Unforgettable Filly, Poet's Vanity back in third, Pomplamoose and Sea of Grace next, and Roly Poly rallying a bit.
Right, the L plates are off. She's learning fast, Daban. John Gosden's once raced filly, rated 81, has taken an enormous step forward. At 12-1 in the hands of Frankie Dettori, she wins the Nell Gwyn, and she marks herself out as a contender for something much, much better. With a sustained run through the final furlong, she's claimed Unforgettable Filly, who's run really well. Travelled well Poet's Vanity in the pale blue colours, and Farside Sea of Grace made a taking move into the race before flattening slightly close home, but little encouragement to be garnered there as well, as there was from Pomplamoose in 5th, but Daban well on top. John Gosden bemoaning the lack of opportunity for her before the race, in a race that he might have considered a little more suitable for one at her stage of her career. But he put her in the Nell Gwyn, and she won it. And now he's got to run her in something a bit better. Frankie Dettori did well here, because she wanted to run into the bridle early, but he got her back and got her covered. And Sea of Grace was stumbled and pecked quite badly there.
She did, and the winner, as you say, is keen early, and still keen. So she's got to be marked up even further than that. Unforgettable Filly travelled like a really good filly in 3rd place behind her old rival Poet's Vanity in the noseband. Strange performance from Roly Poly, who got comprehensively outpaced and went backwards early on and was staying on again at the end when the race was all over. Kilmer in the yellow and black was up there early, and she's run respectably. But the winner, now settled by Dettori, stand side, and they did spread right across the crack in this race, which is a rarity for a smallish field. Has back on the bridle. She's travelled like a really good filly again, and Dettori decided to wait.
Which is a measure of the confidence that perhaps he had in her at this point.
I think he wanted to try and get it home after she'd pulled against him early on, and then he must have thought, blimey, I've got some filly under me, and I'll go now. From coming out of the dip, she's met the rising ground and lengthened away, and won, you'd have to say, a shade cosily after it looking likely to be a very close run thing going into the final furlong. Good effort from Pomplamoose. She looked green. She's the other fillies have rather got first run on her. She's out the back in the all maroon colours, and she showed her inexperience, I think, running into the dip. You saw her video before the race of the flat all-weather track at Chantilly, and this was a different kettle of fish. She's run well and finished 4th. That form up of the Unforgettable Filly Poet's Vanity form from last autumn has been well upheld. They've beaten the Cheveley Park horses out of sight.
Well, Poet's Vanity's travelled very strongly.
Yeah, she wouldn't stay. She looks unlikely to stay a mile, given her running style.
Sea of Grace looks as if she might just have needed the race. I was quite taken with her effort. Yeah. She's eventually only finished 5th.
She looked as though she was going to come and take a real hand, but has weakened out of it. The stumble early on can't have helped. Maybe she just wanted the run. I think Connections was suggesting she might do, but the winner's come here certainly fit enough to win, and given that she pulled hard early, she's going to improve a good deal too.
Nathra won this race in the Silks last year for John Gosden and Frankie Dettori. Went on to be classic placed. This horse, this filly, Daban, is anywhere between 12 and 14-1 for the 1,000 guineas, the Kipco 1,000 guineas, back here in just over a fortnight's time. It's been a sharp learning curve thus far, but it's clearly the obvious target. The question for you is, do you think she can hack it at this stage of her career?
I think she'll be competitive, certainly. I mean, it would have, as you said, as the trainer said, it's not ideal to run in a race like this, to have to run in a race like this with so little experience. But when you win, having things gone against you early on, then the learning curve is vital, and you can come forward an awful lot. Yes, she can be competitive, certainly.
John Gosden will be thrilled with that, and it's a faster time as Frankie Dettori delights the Newmarket faithful here. It's a faster time than that posted by White Cliffs of Dover in the European Free Handicap. White Cliffs of Dover carried 9 stone 7, was rated 108, and Daban carried 9 stone. How much faster? I am yet to hear. Just over 2/10. Just over 2/10 of a second faster.
That's right, really, isn't it? Because Poets Vanity's rated 104, so they're roughly what they should be if there's a direct comparison.
Frankie Dettori just explaining how it was done to John Gosden. We will get the debrief on Racing UK with Tom very shortly, but with news that Daban is the heroine in the Lanwades Stun Nell Gwyn Stakes, we'll return to Rachel with the SPs.
And she's now 2 from 2 unbeaten, adds a Group 3 to her CV. Frankie Dettori's 4th consecutive victory in this race. And the starting price is 12-1. She was an absolute steal. Unforgettable filly, second 14s. Third Poets Vanity at 6-1, and just 3/4 of a length between them. Roly Poly faded quite badly, was the favourite at 7-2. And as we've been touching on, slightly quicker than the European Free Handicap with